English speakers, good evening. Have you heard this expression, taking the Lord's name in vain? What does it mean? Well, in this video, we're going to break it down part by part, and we're going to talk about what it means and where this expression comes from. First, let's look at the word Lord. Lord means master or leader. It's a word that's used to address somebody with respect when that person is in higher power or in a position of leadership in some sort of in a more, I guess, traditional or more medieval social hierarchy. It's not very common anymore, but you might still hear it used in TV shows like Game of Thrones or in movies that have more medieval or fantasy type themes. Now, in this particular expression that we're looking at today, using the Lord's name in vain, or to use the Lord's name in vain, the word Lord here refers to God, and this comes from the 10 Commandments that are in the Old Testament, which is the religious script for the religion of Judaism. The Old Testament is comprised of 39 separate documents, and all of those documents were originally written in ancient Hebrew. That was the language that people in that particular area spoke at that time. In the religion of Judaism, they revered God so much that they felt unworthy of using the personal name of God. The personal name of God in the Hebrew would be written, I guess if you transliterate it into the English alphabet, it would be YHWH. And that word, whenever it occurs, when they're reading out their religious scripts aloud, they wouldn't read it out. Instead, they would substitute the word Lord for that YHWH inscription. A similar practice exists today in the English-speaking world. When we address members of the royal family, we don't use their names. Instead, we address them as Your Majesty or Your Highness. And even when talking about them in the third person, we still use His or Her Majesty, His or Her Highness. Next, let's talk about the word vain. You might have heard of something called a vanity mirror. Vanity is the noun form of vain, and a vanity mirror is used to look at ourselves in the mirror and check that our makeup looks all right, that our hair is all set properly. We use a vanity mirror to look at ourselves, right? So that should give us a hint as to what vain means. So the word vanity kind of carries this meaning of holding yourself in a very high regard above other people, perhaps in terms of your appearance, your intelligence, your abilities, your talents, and so on. But the word vain, in the way that it's usually used, isn't quite as serious. In fact, the sort of situation where you'd often hear someone use the word vain is to describe someone who likes to look at themselves in the mirror a lot. For example, if you know someone who's really handsome or really beautiful or who's recently been working out a lot at the gym, and you might notice them looking at themselves in the mirror a lot and just kind of admiring themselves and flexing their muscles. And we'd typically describe someone like that as being vain. Now, if we take the idea of vanity, of holding yourself in a very high regard, we can kind of extrapolate from that it could also mean to have a disregard for others. And that's the sort of meaning that the word vain has in the expression to take the Lord's name in vain. It means to have a disregard for the holiness or sanctity of the name of God. So for anyone who's a pious Jew or Christian, pious means serious about their religious beliefs. When they read that commandment in the 10 Commandments, which says to not take the Lord's name in vain, they would understand that to mean broadly to treat God's name with its due reverence. So to treat something with reverence means to treat it with respect. And in this case, that would include, but not be restricted to, using God's name to express intense emotion, such as, oh my God, or Jesus Christ, to express excitement, anger, disgust, or frustration. In the same way, I suppose, as how we wouldn't use the name of a loved one or someone dear to us to express intense emotion. So I don't normally talk about religion on this page, but I actually got a question about this phrase, to take the Lord's name in vain, from a follower. So this was my explanation of that. If you learned something new, let me know what it was in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.